Welcome back. The Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call brought to you by Ireland Contracting, Pittsburgh's #1 home exterior expert in roofing, siding, windows, and gutters. Josh Taylor in tonight for Bob Pompiani. We are talking Pirates on the hot streak right now. 9 games in a row. Also Steelers 3 days away from training camp. What are you expecting to be better with this team going into this season? What do you think is going to be not as good? 412-575-2600 on the Bordas and Bordas hotline. Let's go to Twitter before we take some calls. PA Ram says the Pirates would have to finish the season at least 35-27 to have any shot at a wild card. He asked my thoughts on that. The difficulty with that is, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen beating teams in the division. And that's how you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because the majority of the schedule moving forward is teams in their own division. So they're going to have to do well against St. Louis when they come back home. I think they have the Cubs for 2 games. After that, when they go to Cleveland, they come back. I think it's 4 against the Mets, 2 against the Cubs, and 3 against St. Louis. They're going to have to do that in order to make it easier. So if they could stack up wins against the division, it might be possible. And right now, their record against the division is pretty good. So if you're talking about looking at it against Milwaukee, whom they played well against, the Cardinals, whom they played pretty well against, and they seem to be teetering at this point, you want to use that to your advantage. And, of course, they're 8-4 this year against the Reds. The Cubs are the one team they tend to struggle with. But if they can stack wins and continue to play well against division teams, I don't think it's impossible. It's just there's a lot of things that have to happen right for that to be a case. Big Papa KD says the biggest concern I have about the Steelers is the middle linebacker position. Have to fill the position for Ryan Shazier. I will have to agree with that. I have the same questions about that position. And I've said this a few times already in the past couple of weeks. When you have a guy like Ryan Shazier, who was such a dynamic playmaker and did so many different things as far as size, as far as his speed, as far as his ability to cover, his ability to play in the run game, even his ability to blitz from that position and get after the quarterback. He does a lot of great things at the same time. And when you lose that guy who is essentially a linchpin to your defense and does so many different things at the same time, and you lose that element in one fell swoop, now you have to replace all of those different elements. Can they do it with one guy? No. It's going to have to be with a bunch of different guys. Vince Williams is going to have to be one of those guys. Tyler Matakevich is going to have to be there. John Bostic is going to have to be there. And if those guys can't do it, expect the guys in the secondary, whether it's in sub packages or otherwise, to be expected to step in and try to help fill that load. So there's a lot of guys that are going to be expected to try to fill that void. So I totally agree with that. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Paul in Vanport. Paul, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, Josh.
How are you?
You look sharp tonight. I like your shirt and tie.
I'm trying to channel the spirit of pomp. That's what I'm doing. Trying to be like the man.
I got a couple of questions regarding the Steelers. First question: how much motivation does that give the younger players, Connor and the other running backs, that Bell is not going to show up in camp? And the other question is, when the regular season begins, how are the other players going to feel about Bell being a team player when he was offered that big contract and turned it down? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you.
Both good questions. Appreciate the call. To your first question, and some of those guys did talk about it during minicamp, especially rookie minicamp. I actually asked Jalen Samuels about that situation. Particularly the topic of the running back position is expected to do so much in this offense. And he's a guy who did so much at North Carolina State. And I asked him, how do you feel about this opportunity? He said, I'm ready to do whatever they tell me to do. He says, I've been doing a lot of multiple things since I was in high school. So a guy like Jalen Samuels, I think, is more energized to get that opportunity to learn what he needs to do. I think a guy like James Conner, whom has really taken a much different approach this offseason, I think when you see him coming up in the fall, he's going to look like a different guy. He's actually made he's made a lot of efforts to get himself in different shape, or you could say better shape, but he looks like a much different player. And I think he's taken that opportunity to realize that he could be counted upon to do some extra things in this offense, to maybe get himself some reps. He's got to be ready if Le'Veon Bell gets hurt. So James Conner, I think, is taking the opportunity to make himself ready. Fitzgerald Toussaint, he's been in this league for a couple of years. I think he knows what it takes to get himself prepared and ready to go. Same thing with Stephen Ridley. Some of these guys have been around long enough to know what it takes. As far as the other players are concerned, I'm just as curious as you are, because when this time came around last year, you heard the players saying, well, Le'Veon's got to do the best thing for him. He's got to do the best thing for his family. As long as he shows up in week 1 and he's ready, we won't have any problems. Well, he showed up for week 1. He said he was ready. Maybe didn't look his most prepared. And maybe that had a residual effect. So will they feel the same way the second time around? I'm not sure. He's already said expect a repeat of last year. If that's the case, expect him to show up right before week 1, and hopefully the results are different. If they're not, we'll see if guys feel differently. I think that's a good thing to keep an eye on. Let's go to Joe in Penn Hills. Joe, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Josh, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Listen, the other day the Dodgers made a trade, and yesterday Oakland, who is 9 games out of first with Houston, but only 4 games out of the wild card, but they're going for it. We don't have to wait till the last day. We don't have to wait for the scraps. If they feel like making a deal tomorrow, they can do that. They can show the Pirate fans that they're going for it for once. We're just instead of worrying about next year and all this. So, I get tired of hearing, 8 more days. Go for it. Do like Oakland. You got to change your, ammo sometime. You got to do it, Josh. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Appreciate the call. No one's suggesting that they have this time to the deadline to say they have to wait until then. That's just how much time they have left. You got to figure it out between now and then. It doesn't have to be right at the very last minute, which they have done in years past. Let's not discount that. Best idea in the world? Probably not. But no one's stating that the deadline is so many days away that they have to wait up until the deadline. That's just, you got this X amount of days to get it together. That's how I'm looking at it. As far as potential moves are concerned, they need to make the right move that best suits them. But here's the trick of it. They're just back above 500. They're just 2 games back over. However, they're 4 games out of the wild card, just like Oakland is. And you made a good point. Uris Familia going to Oakland when they've already got a pretty good back of their bullpen. So that shows you what Oakland's trying to do. They're trying to make their bullpen stronger because they've got a lot of young starters. So if they can get a lead after 5 or 6 innings and bring those guys in the bullpen in and have them shut teams down, it probably makes Oakland's chances a little bit stronger to steal some wins that they might not normally get. So I think that's a good move for Oakland. Probably a little bit out of Billy Beane's character, but still, it does tell you that they're going for it. If they're going to make any moves, I want them to make moves under the impression that we're doing this because it makes our ball club better. I hear people saying, well, they got to do this to show the fans. Here's the best way to show the fans things. Go out and win games. That's what shows the fans that you're actually serious. Go out and win games, give good effort. That's what shows fans. If you're making moves to make your fans happy, they're going to be bad moves. I just mentioned Billy Beane in Oakland. You know what one of his basic principles is? If you make a move for the sake of feeling that you have to make a move, you've already made a bad one. So don't make moves to make people happy. Make moves to make your team better. Start there and then work your way out. Let's go to Nunzio and Braddock. Nunzio, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, good evening. The current Pirate situation reminds me of the movie Major Leagues.
That's been discussed quite a bit, actually.
When the players and the coaches were giving their all to win and the owner don't care. I think they're doing what they're doing now despite the owner and putting the onus on him. So he needs to step up, and we already know the answer to that. Whatever excuse he's going to make, but you know the cuts are coming. And that's a sad situation. But he better watch himself because they are still under investigation for not spending any money.
They are?
15. Oh, yeah, they said that was ongoing and situation
that
a few days
before
ago was in the news.
Season, but here's the thing, and thank you for the call because I got to cut you short. I'm up against the break. 2 things. 1, trade deadline moves, those are more of a reflection of your general manager. A move, the money attached to a move does not matter if it's not the right guy. Whether the guy's salary is $5 million, $50 million, or $500,000. If he ain't a good player, it doesn't really matter. Because I'll tell you something. I've talked about this earlier in the season. We saw the Pirates go out in L.A. and get smacked around by guys that are making $550,000 a season. So the money attached to it doesn't matter. Find the right guy. That's how that works. As far as the investigation is concerned, they have bigger fish to fry, honestly. If that's what they're worried about, then they need to look at the system as a whole and fix the system as a whole. Not worrying about what individual teams do. Because as long as you set the system up for teams to be allowed to do that, then the problem ain't the teams. The problem is the system you created. Got to take a break. We'll be back in a few.